live video here. To talk about 2022 Cascadias that now become available at Crete. Here it is, April 2025. This is a little early, I think, for Crete to be releasing the 2022s already. But I called and I asked them if they had any 21s available. They had one 2021 left at 63,000, and it was in Salt Lake City terminal. And two drivers were on their way to go look at it. So kiss that one goodbye. So, the 2022s, they come out, the price is at 84,000. And you look at that price, you're like 84,000. The 2021s are 63, so you're talking about a $21,000 jump in truck prices from one year to the next. It's like, holy cats. What's going on with that? I personally, I think that's a little high. Honestly, I think that's still a little high. Those prices may come down. Given another 6 months, those prices could very well come down 10 grand. I just think that's a little high. Now, I did some comparison to what other Freightliners are available commercially if they're like dealer lots. And you can get a similar truck for say like 86,000, but it didn't come with the Daimler extended warranty. So that could be another 6,000. So then it's 92,000. Then you would have a 6% sales tax on top of that. So now you're getting that truck up to over 100,000, and then you got to do a 10% interest rate on that loan. By the time you pay it off, it's well over 100,000. If you look at the Crete truck, it's 84,000, but it includes the additional 6,000 that's for the Daimler warranty, the extended warranty. So when you put it in that context, you're like, okay, well now we're making sense here, because that's a good deal. That's a good deal compared to that dealership for sure. And the interest rates could still be about the same, but I think you're gonna save with Crete compared to go and buy it off the dealer lot. So it's still a good deal, but it's not as good a deal as the 2021. 2021 was a sweet deal. 63,000 for a 2021. That was a good deal, and I'm surprised. This happens periodically, that it's all about supply and demand. Truck prices go up and then truck prices come down. During peak freight during the pandemic, and I had to buy another truck, and I bought a 2019 Cascadia. Yeah, it was $103,000 for that truck, and it was like, holy cats. So then 6 months later, the prices came down. And then you can buy the same truck in 2021 for 63. That was a wild swing. It went from 103 down to 63. It's like $40,000 drop in prices. And now the prices have jumped up 23,000. So that's the game you play when you're on shop for trucks, is that those truck prices can swing wildly, very wildly, and no one can predict when the price is going to go up or when the price is going to come down. And generally speaking, during a recession, prices will come down, and during a strong economy, prices will go up. Because the rates will be going up, the demand for trucks will be going up. So it's tough. I think with the tariff situation going on right now, especially with China, if that drags out, that could slow things down. I'm already seeing some indications that the freight coming out of the ports, the imported freight from China, those guys, they haul that freight from the ports to the warehouses. They go back and forth, and that freight is drying up. I was down at Walmart distribution center down in Houston, the big port down there, and this distribution center has like 4 warehouses. It's normally packed with freight. I went in there, it was like a ghost town, So I have seen indications that truck prices could come down, potentially could come down. Now, if they resolve the trade disputes and all these, trade deals get completed with over 100 different countries, including China, then it's off to the races. All bets are off. The economy could boom and then truck prices will go back up. I think, too, a contributing factor to truck prices is that 25% tariff on the auto industry. I think that would apply to trucking as well to automotive. So a lot of parts are made in Canada or Mexico or overseas, and you have assembly plants that are in Canada and Mexico, and then they bring those vehicles, including trucks, into the United States. They used to make the Cascadias in, I think, one of the Carolinas, South Carolina or North Carolina, and then they moved that plant to Mexico. So, you know, if you got a Cascadia less than several years old, it's probably assembled in Mexico. Well, now that there's a 25% tariff on all this, transportation, automotive stuff coming out of Mexico, that could be contributing to why truck prices are a little elevated right now. It's like, the demand for those trucks is a little bit, demand for used trucks may be up a little bit versus buying a brand new truck that has a 25% tariff slapped on it. So I think that's true for the used vehicle market for personal vehicles. The value of a used vehicle may go up because the price of imports just went up by 25%. So there'll be more demand on domestically produced vehicles. It's interesting, Kenworth is made in USA. Kenworth Peterbilt still made in USA. They wouldn't have the import slapped on them. So, there may be an incentive there for trucking companies to buy more Kenworths, for example, if it costs less, until Freightliner decides to reopen some plants here in the U.S. and start building trucks in the U.S. again. So I think the Cascadia is a better truck than the Kenworth T680. I've driven them both. And I didn't really like the Cummins engine. I like the Detroit diesel engine. I just thought the overall quality of the Cascadia was better than the Kenworth. But there's some diehard Kenworth guys out there, and they swear by their trucks. It's like, okay, each their own. Doesn't bother me. But for my money, I'd put it on a Cascadia if you're going to haul dry van. So it's interesting to keep an eye on the market. It's always a strategy as an owner operator. How long are you going to keep the truck you have? When are you going to trade it in, or when are you going to try to sell it on your own? And how much are the prices going to be to replace your truck? So I think, for me as a Crete owner operator, I like to buy the truck at 400,000 miles. And I think a good selling point is 600,000 miles. Sell it on your own. You'll get a better price than if you trade it in. If you trade it in, the dealer's going to lowball you. It's not going to give you much for it because they got to turn around and sell it. And if you hold on to a truck too long, like say you hold the truck up to 700,000 miles, the dealership may not want it, so then you're going to have to sell it on your own. So these are things you have to think about: a truck rotation strategy, when you're going to rotate trucks, things like that. These extended warranties, they go up to 750,000 miles. So it's not a bad strategy to just hold on to your truck all the way up to 750,000 miles. And then once that warranty expires, then, just get rid of it and go get another one. A lot of people think the trucks nowadays are throwaway trucks. You don't really gain anything by holding on to a truck up to 1,000,000 miles or beyond, because it'll nickel dime you to death. You'll be broke down on the side of the road all the time, and you'll have service failure. You can't deliver the load because you have unreliable equipment. And it's not worth dropping 30 to 50 grand to either rebuild or replace the engine. So a lot of people feel the trucks are throwaways, and some guys will run it all the way up, try to squeeze as much value as they can out of that truck, and then throw it away. Go get another one. There's nothing wrong with that strategy, but if you're thinking like, where's a sweet spot for you to unload a truck? I really think it's around 600,000 miles because you'll still have plenty of buyers who are interested in buying that truck. It still has trade-in value, you know, and you should be able to get a truck and run it for 2 years and turn around and sell it. And I always thought my strategy would be I want to keep climbing the food chain, so my next truck would be better than the truck I had before, for example, and eventually I get to the point where I would be buying trucks brand new. I haven't reached that point yet, but that's always like my goal. It's like I want to move up this food chain, so you're not always driving the crappiest oldest truck on the road. And a lot of these newer trucks come with improved safety features, that's better design, more reliability, better warranties. It's always nice to upgrade your ride, no doubt about it. You may not want to hold on to your truck 3 years or 4 years. It's like every 2 years you're switching into a newer truck. That's not a bad way to go. But keep an eye on them truck prices. I was a little bit surprised that they were selling at 84. Now, the most I've ever paid was 103. So 84, it's not the most I've ever paid. It wouldn't be the end of the world. But that was a significant jump. It was $23,000 jump from 63,000 for a 2021 to 84,000 for a 2022. I mean, that was a sizable jump. And I wonder why that is. And I'm only left to believe that supply and demand, demand must be getting stronger, and or the tariff situation may be affecting truck prices. But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And it could come down over the next few months. Interest rates are expected to come down. Right now, you're looking at 10, 11% interest rates on a truck loan. If you wait 6 months, it may come down couple points, perhaps, if we're lucky. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the internet.